Great to see everyone this morning. Thank you so much for coming to the session, for making your way all the way across the street, which in sort of conference world feels like a long way somehow, but here we are, so thank you, appreciate it. We have an incredible panel today. By way of kind of brief introduction, my name is Will Koffel. I am a director of the Inception program at NVIDIA. If you don't know, Inception is our scaled startup program, so we're here to support the entire kind of global startup ecosystem in understanding, adopting, and getting successful with NVIDIA platforms and technologies. We've got over 18,000 startups in this program of all sizes, ranging from folks who are just starting out to companies like you see on the stage here, all of whom are in Inception, all of whom sort of raised a lot of money, had incredible product market fit and traction, and here today to talk about that. So if you are with a startup, if you are working with startups, feel free to check us out at nvidia.com/startups, and we welcome folks kind of coming in. There's a lot of resources there, including training and cloud credits and discounts on NVIDIA hardware and other benefits, support from our team. So take a look there. I'll start by introing this great set of companies on this panel. A brief bit about them. We're going to hear a lot more over the course of this morning's conversation, but just by way of brief intro, Maiko Cook here to my left is with Writer. Writer is an enterprise generative AI built to deliver fast time to value, transforming how we work, originally focused on content generation, marketing teams, but Writer's actually developed their own LLM now, using NVIDIA tech, of course, but delivering that via full stack end-to-end solution, so including the UI and a rich ecosystem of plugins, so really kind of ready-made solution. Ryan Fitzpatrick, I'm not going in order, sorry. I can go in order. Eran Yahav is the CTO and founder at Tabnine. So Tabnine offers an AI coding assistant, very hot space right now, for development teams. They're focused on privacy and personalization, and all protected through a real kind of strict attention to enterprise needs and compliant licensing. Something I know we'll talk more about this morning is top of everyone's mind. Eran himself is a comp sci professor at Tabnine, which, if you guys don't know, people sometimes call it the MIT of Israel. I think you guys call MIT the Technion of the United States. Yeah. But he's been exploring code synthesis since long before the rest of us even realized it was cool. So he goes sort of way back, an OG of this space. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick is with Synthesia. They create studio quality videos with AI avatars and voiceovers, lowering the barrier to entry for high quality corporate video production that lets companies communicate in this kind of super modern content format. Everybody wants video now, right? All the kids aren't going to pay attention unless you put it in a video. So I think there's a huge market there. Carlos Reina is with ElevenLabs. ElevenLabs generates high quality text to speech through incredibly realistic AI voices. So spoken audio in any voice, style, and language. I almost guarantee that you have heard ElevenLabs voices all across the internet when you're hearing articles read to you or advertising or all these other things. They're everywhere. And then last but certainly not least, Yair Adato is with Bria. Bria is doing responsible, open, visual generative AI. So think images, text to image, built with fully licensed training data, unbiased output on a foundation specifically that lets their customers build and tune custom solutions on top of that. So building a lot of this whole kind of layer that's going to power text to image. So I want to go down the line and just have folks give a quick statement on kind of what the role is and your scope of the role, and then maybe if you've got a fun anecdote to kick things off about AI, about your company, about your personal experience, anything.
Yep. Can everyone hear me? I do operations at Writer at a startup that tends to be a lot of different things. Currently, mostly focused on building customizations for customers. How do we do that at scale? As an anecdote, I would say we're a very Slack-heavy company. We communicate over Slack all the time. We're very distributed. One of our team members on the AI and NLP team, all of a sudden on Slack, we all noticed that his answers were very polished and very long, and then we all said, hey, wait a minute, I think there's an LLM involved in here somewhere, and he had hooked it up to rewrite his responses back to the rest of the team.
Yeah, I'm Eran. I'm a CTO of Tabnine. At Tabnine, this means dealing with models, dealing with all the infrastructure, inference, training, etc. amusing anecdote. I don't know. I think since I joined Tabnine, everything that I said would be impossible became possible. So I think every week almost we break as a category things that I thought would not be doable within the next 5 to 10 years and are doable within weeks. So that's super surprising and amusing.
Good morning. My name is Ryan. I look after the global strategic sales team at Synthesia, which solid attempt on the name there. We'll work on that. But
did I get it wrong?
It's fun. I've heard
There's
about
so
5
many
iterations
variations
of it since we started today, so it's good. But brand identity. So one of the most interesting things since I've gotten into this space for me, so I've been in the video production space the entirety of my career. I used to work on The Daily Show. I've kind of been on the other side of this. And the last job I had before I got into kind of SaaS and sales was I was doing talking head training videos for BMW North America. And when I interviewed with Synthesia, I looked at what the product was and I went, whoa, I don't have that job anymore. And I've just made it incredibly more efficient for me to do what I used to do. So that was a real world experience for me that made me see that we can change the entire landscape of what this is and create so many efficiencies for business that are incredible. And like I said, it resonates with me in such a meaningful way. I'll keep this.
I'm Carles, VP of Revenue at ElevenLabs. Primarily, we do only one thing. We try to do the best way, which is like voice technology. And it was funny because 10 days ago, I was in New York, in a meeting with a very large, well-known entertainment or media company in this country. And then they're like, oh, we wanna render this type of content, but we would like you to render it because it's very specific, right? And I was like, sure, send it. And then they ended up sending it literally a few hours later, and the content was super messy, super messy. It was not even possible. You need to actually do it fully manually. So I messaged them back saying can you actually send it in a better way? And they're like, no, you guys do AI. You figure it out. So these are the type of anecdotes that we have pretty much on a weekly basis that is happening to us. But it's a pleasure being here as well.
So I'm Yair, I'm the CEO of Bria. CEO means that I'm doing everything that other people in the company doesn't want to do. As an anecdote, when we started talking with the data owners and the artists, they say that AI is the devil, and you are a devil company. And it took us a time to tell them, no, we are on the license side, we are on the IP side, and now they say that they discover a new continent. So I thought that is a nice perspective.
That's great, thank you guys. So in order to help get the most value out of this conversation, I also want to know a little bit about you guys. So this is audience participation time. I know it's 9 a.m., there's coffee in the back if you need it. Audience participation time. So let's see, show of hands, who's a technical practitioner in your organization? We hear technical practitioners? Yeah. And kind of business leaders, executives, probably most of the other folks. Great. Who thinks AI is the devil? Well, definitely a few. This is good. We want to have some naysayers in the crowd. I appreciate that. So among your companies, let me see a show of hands. How many people have at least begun to explore generative AI solutions? So you're in sort of exploration phase at least. Okay, now keep your hands up if you've actually used tools, built proof of concept or prototypes. Okay, and keep your hands up if you actually have AI, especially generative AI solutions deployed in production right now, either sort of for internal or external use. Good, so lots of folks. Okay, now and then I have one more follow-up question. Of the folks who kind of have their hands up for things in production, raise your hands if that was something that you're using third-party APIs and tools like the folks that are up here to enable. All right, and who's been actually building it from scratch internally? Almost about a half and half. Okay, really interesting, that's great. So we're gonna leave plenty of time at the end for Q&A here, because we've got some nice breathing room this morning, and I wanna make sure that we get the topics that you care about. But I think in the meantime, there's a ton of kind of wide-ranging stuff that we can talk about. Some of this is guided by conversations that I've had with this amazing panel, and some of it is, of course, a lot of things that NVIDIA is hearing from enterprises about what it's gonna look like to adopt AI, especially over the course of the next year. I wanna start with the value proposition for generative AI, and Eran, maybe you can maybe you can help frame this kind of GenAI revolution a little bit for us as someone who, working on code generation even before LLMs and now seeing the kind of post-LLM. What is that step function? How do you see the sort of phases of this generative AI right now?
Yeah, first of all, I think code is the most expensive content being generated today, right? And so the value in code generation is quite obvious. If you can get 10% productivity on code getting generated, you're already generating huge financial kind of benefit, right? So that's a good incentive and the reason that we're seeing such strong adoption in this category. When we started, the amount of code that was like circa 2019, 2018, this technology could generate around one line of code or something like that for you. And it was great because it accelerated you as the developer. And pretty fast it became to generating whole functions, whole classes, and now it's at the pace of generating entire projects or entire applications, right? So you can see the curve accelerating actually in the amount of code getting generated and in the quality of the code getting generated. So yeah, I think overall people adopting products in this category are seeing end-to-end productivity boost of 20% on their software development. So that's a huge improvement end-to-end from kind of ideation to production. 20% uplift is huge saving. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, and Carlos, I have a similar question because I think you're in a space that in some ways like text-to-speech has been done forever. So text-to-speech we've been doing for decades, right? So what do you see this as kind of a continuous, the next natural step in it, or is it really a discontinuous uplift in that, like that AI has enabled? What does that revolution mean for your space?
I think it's really good, right? Because like at the end of the day, like you're able to do a lot more things that you were not able to do before, right? And when I look at the code side, like you can think the 20% uplift as impacting your bottom line, so you become a lot more efficient, or you can think about it as you can actually do 20% more code, which essentially translates into new products, new monetization options, new things that were not possible yesterday, right? And for me, it's more like the top line that also impacts your bottom line. And when we think about like voice technology, it's that element that like it needs to be engaging for people to actually like be willing to listen to it and everything, right? Like the worst scenario is like Alexa, for instance, that actually sounds very robotic. And at the end of the day, like it's fantastic because it does certain amount of things, but it's not an element where like people would spend hours and hours and hours talking to it. So how do you develop something that is a little more like engaging, exciting? That's essentially what we try to do. And I think like the technology has taken it like to a whole new level that it's just like unbelievable. And we're probably going to be seeing this year, at least from what we're working on, it's just like we're taking it to a whole new level, right? It's just like what was not possible like 6 months ago or even imaginable 6 months ago, that's actually going to happen in the next 3 months. So like that's the evolution of the technology overall, from code to like video generation to like image, like anything, or speech synthesis. It's just like taking off as an industry overall, right?
You alluded to something in there I want to ask Ryan about. I think one of the things we hear a lot is, hey, AI is going to save us a ton of money. So I think I saw a stat that 85% of Fortune 500 CEOs think that they're gonna have at least a 10% savings coming into their organization in the next 2 years due to AI. You can only save your way, to total spend. So I guess I'm curious, when we talk about the value proposition of AI here, Ryan, what do you see customers saying, no, it's not about allowing us to do faster video production in the way that you said, oh, we're going to be disrupted by this. Are there opportunities for the upside? Like, what does it look like for customers doing it to have more revenue than they ever could before?
It's interesting. So I met with one of a large banking firm that we work with the other day, and they took us through all the various ways in which they're using Synthesia to create engaging video. And the thing that resonated for me in that conversation was it wasn't about the efficiencies gained or the cost gains from where they were using Synthesia. It was about the time savings that they can then reapply to creating more engaging content in their high production value videos. So this firm said, we were spending close to $120,000 on all this in-between video that we were doing in order to communicate with people. I've now been able to take that, reallocate that resource, and now our high quality productions have gone up 10x. and we get a little bit too focused on what efficiencies are being gained by our product. We fail to understand a bit how these businesses are then taking all of those savings of time and money and reapplying them to areas of their business that were once neglected. And that to me is what's most powerful.
I see, so there's two parts. There's the opportunity cost of having people do work that maybe they don't need to, but then separately there's the actual advantage of AI creating higher quality product, which hopefully creates a virtuous cycle on revenue.
Exactly, and I think what I've really tried to make sure myself and my team really explain to customers is realize it for them. It's, hey, if I could buy you back 3 hours in every single one of your days, paint me a picture, what would you do? And I think when you put it in those kind of contexts for people, it really does make them think. It's like, well, if I had 3 more hours, imagine what I could accomplish. Imagine how much more code I could write. You know, what else could I spend my time on that's really meaningful, that's going to drive my business? And that's what I think it really resonates, and that's the kind of narrative I think we as organizations need to start bringing to the market to make it feel like a safe space.
That's great. I want to talk about the adoption of this among enterprises, among the people in the room, kind of among everyone. And there I see there's really two questions. One is, what's the low-hanging fruit? Where should we be thinking about adopting GenAI first, and sort of what is it ready for? What is it safe for? And then the other side of that, of course, what are the barriers that are remaining for people to adopt, and how do we clear those away? In terms of what I think of as the adoption beachheads, I'm interested in Maiko's experience working with a ton of customers at Writer, who you probably of everyone on the stage touches as many potential corners of an organization, and with this core real large language model, text-driven generation. A recent BCG survey said 89% of executives are ranking AI and GenAI in particular as a top 3 tech priority for 2024. Seems kind of easy for executives to say, but where are they actually going to go and adopt this? And so I'm curious, Maiko, what have you found so far among use cases for Writer that you might say sell themselves? Like, what is this thing that's just, this is already ready to go?
Well, I think anything that's you can tie to revenue is always the thing that people are interested in. And so we have a lot of use cases for marketing teams. That's in terms of creating more assets, creating more ads, creating more things and variations. As I think Ryan was saying, it's not just that you save time, but now that you're able to generate more content, you can generate more variations and see what works better. And so people are interested in that. And also tools kind of help sellers sell. So do you need to do account research for a company you're coming up, you're about to have a meeting? Are there ways we can help you understand, synthesize, get in a short amount of time, kind of a brief on what you need to know about that company, and be ready to sell? Also, we do, I think a lot of customers are interested in digital assistants for internal enablement. What are your best source of truth documents, and how do you get the information in them to anyone at your company in the fastest, kind of easy to use way?
Yeah, you alluded to, and I'm sort of open this up to anybody in the panel, this, you know, another dichotomy we see is people saying, well, I'm willing to invest in generative AI tools, but it's for internal use only, right? Like, we're not leaking that out to our customers yet for any number of reasons. How have you guys seen that balance of things where people are saying, I'll deploy, but I'm going to kind of keep it in-house for now versus generating external?
I can start here if that's okay. I think for us, this is actually a really unique problem in the sense of, you know, the believability of our avatar technology. You know, when we first came to market, the easiest landing spot for us in organizations was learning and development. Why learning and development? It's internal. It was a very easy way for us to start our footprint into a business. The benefit of starting in learning and development was, though, every single person in the organization interacted with our video. So we were able to automatically start to build trust in what that was. And as our technology now advances and the avatar believability has gone up tenfold, now they're starting to see real-world applications where they could start to put that in public-facing fashions, whether it be their customer service organization, maybe their SDR and sales organization. So these are the lanes that we can now drive in to start to build out those forward-facing applications.
We're working with clients that actually doing that for external use, for their user. We create a platform, give it to clients, and they build something out of it and use that with their clients. And in order to be in a position that organization will feel comfortable to use this technology, you need to do two things. One, you need to build trust with the system, We usually don't think about it because we are tech-oriented, but you need to build trust with the AI platform. And the second one is to remove the obvious barriers. The barriers are there. You need to acknowledge that, and you need to explain how you're going to face them and remove them. So, for example, in the visual space, everything related to license, privacy, copyright is something that you need to address. When you address that, then they can use it.
Yeah, I definitely want to loop back to some of the AI safety questions. But I think I want to talk a little bit more, maybe while you have the mic here, about those adoption barriers. So, I think some of the things we've seen internally in our surveys is it's about maybe a shortage of talent or skills. People don't know how to apply these tools, unclear investment priorities, like how do we figure out what our ROI is on something that's still so speculative. Obviously, the absence of a strategy for responsible AI, you alluded to. I mean, is that consistent? Like, is it the licensing and safety that you see as the biggest thing that's stopping companies from doing it, or what else is there?
The licensing and safety is the foot of the door. It's necessary requirements to even start the dialogue for big enterprises. Then there is the question of the use case. In many times we try to do something that we are doing today automatically, but this technology is, as you said, a step function. It can create so much more, and people don't really understand or can imagine what they can do with that. And it takes time to organization to come here with a presentation of 30 things that I want to do with generative AI. And they are there now. So we see this type of presentation today. So if you solve the safety trusted AI is the devil issue, and they are ready to adopt it in a way that I agree with what has been said here. It's not about cost saving, it's about create more revenue. Then you can start to see adoption.
Yeah.
I think there's been an interesting change between last year and this year. Where last year, there was ChatGPT was still the bone thing. Oh, this is new. Everyone wanted to test it. So there was a lot of AI tourists in there, right? But there was a lot of fear in there, from a corporate perspective. This year, what we've seen is it's actually flipped. The corporate side actually started trusting AI a lot more, generative AI specifically. Now they actually have the budgets. Now they're willing to invest, and they have some clear ideas of what they want to do. Whether that's going to be the things that they stick on for the next 12 months or for the next 10 months, that's unlikely, right? So they will start with one use case. And for me, it's less important whether they start with an internal use case or with an external use case. It's more if you start with one, you will end up finding out that you can do another 20 use cases. So by the end of the year, by the end of the next 12 months, you will have the majority of those use cases fully implemented. And the majority of them will end up going actually from an external perspective, because it goes back to the end of at the end of the day, external side, top line, generating more revenues. If you can generate another 10% revenues, it's much better than actually if you can improve your margin by 10%, right?
Right.
So that's primarily. But I think while we've had that transition between from last year to this year, a bigger question mark has become on the trust, on the deep fakes element, right? So that's where today a lot of the conversations that we're having actually are centered around as well.
Yeah, I'll let you weigh in, Eran, but I think it's actually a really interesting insight to see that companies now have imagination about what they can use GenAI for, right? So rather than us saying, rather than them saying, what can I do with it? They're saying, this is what I want to do with it. I think that seems like a really important inflection point for the industry. Eran?
There is another question. So the next question will be how I'm going to do it.
Right.
So now in the how.
I would say what we're seeing in the market are basically three barriers to adoption. One is privacy. When you're dealing with code, a lot of the time, this is the central IP of the company. They don't want their code being sent elsewhere. So at this point, at least in the market, many of our customers want on-premise deployments or in VPC deployments, so the code does not travel anywhere else. So privacy is definitely a central issue. Second is the protection issue, protection from IP violations. Tabnine trains all our models only on permissively licensed open source code, so we can guarantee that we don't generate GPL code, don't inject any IP violations into your code. And that's definitely a barrier to adoption in regulated industries. So many of our customers choose Tabnine because of that. And the third is, I think we've kind of matured from the cool party trick of, hey, this can generate code, right? Which was last year. It's like the dog playing the piano, right? It's not a question of if it does it well, it just plays the piano. It's amazing, right? So we passed the party trick, and now people are, wait, is the code being generated the right one? Is it really personalized for the way we do things in the org? Like, is it following our best practices? If we think about it architecturally, is it doing the right thing? So it's not enough to like generate 30% more code. If you don't generate the right code, it's actually worse than not doing it, right? So you're just getting into more trouble, more technical debt. So we're seeing like the requirements kind of going up on this domain.
Which is never satisfied, huh? Like enough is never enough.
You know,
it's unbelievable.
Again, once you're done with the party trick, you get to actual productivity boost as expected from human engineers, right? Yeah.
Now, does a human stay in the loop on all these solutions? I think that's another, I mean, just to circle back a little bit to the value proposition, or have any of you yet seen cases where, you know, sure, the AI is just checking in code on its own. As long as it works, no one looks at it. I assume every human, most organizations are still looking at it. I assume most humans are reviewing the videos coming out of Synthesia. Yeah, go.
I just want to say one thing, that it's really a question, the way we look at it, it's a question of delegation. So a lot of the code writing and a lot of like the content generated, I think for others as well, is kind of how you define the boundaries. In Writer and in Tabnine, a lot of the work is kind of collaborative with the AI, right? You are writing your code and the AI chimes in and you're kind of working together. But I think next level is being able to offshore a lot of the work to silicon, right? So just like you offshore it to a dev group in another location, you offshore the development to silicon. And then the challenge becomes, how do you define what you want to get done, right? And how do you check that what you got is the right thing? And that's a huge challenge. I think also in kind of video generation or voice generation, somebody has to review it, and reviewing it is hard. Yeah.
No, it's good. That's why we're friends here. You know, it's for our product, and this is, you know, again, I have high levels of empathy for video creators. You know, I am a video creator at heart. So when I look at this product, you know, this is a tool in your toolkit to work more efficiently, faster, and in a higher quality way. So we always say we're going to get you 90% of the way to a polished product. That's it. We get you 90% of the way there, and then we create tools within the product that allow you to moderate, to give consent on items, to actually collaborate on items. You know, listen, my French is not great, so I'm probably going to need someone to come in and gut check that French is correct in the text, but we're going to get you 90% of the way there. And that, I think, is incredible, but I don't see an element of this where humans are removed from the process, because it'll never quite be perfect without that element added in.
When I started my PhD, I was 100% sure that my daughter will never learn how to drive. My daughter is going to turn 15 next week.
Yeah, we're big believers in human in the loop, and I think finding the really transformative workflows and processes is when you kind of decide all the steps that go into whatever content you're trying to create, whatever you're trying to make. What are all the places that it makes sense to have AI and automation, and what are the things that people are going to do better? You don't need to think of a process as a monolith, but it is the back and forth. Like, where does a human come in, put their spin on it, make it better, make it unique, right? So it's not just like any other thing that's been generated by AI out there. And then when do you put AI back in to help you accelerate?
But I think that there is a split as well. And I love the discussion purely because, like, there is the co-pilot element, and there is the AI, so the generative AI models that actually generate content by themselves to actually do things that you cannot monitor or like control real time, right? And that's like two different use cases that are like fundamentally very different, that require like different ways of managing it. If you're a co-pilot or like if you're offering more of a, pitching it as a co-pilot, it's like, it's enhancing you. Essentially, you can review, you can work with the model to essentially like make your life much easier. Perfect. If it's actually generating like voice for a chatbot or for a call center, then the actual co-pilot style like disappears completely, right? Like the model needs to be correct and accurate, otherwise, or like have at least a low level of like hallucinations, right? Otherwise, the value is not there. And I think like that's where like the biggest split between generative AI actually companies is happening, right? Like either you do a co-pilot style product, or for some use cases, or essentially you're just fully autonomous driving that like output generation. ChatGPT style or Anthropic style versus like, I don't know, like generating something else, right?
Yes, I just want to add to that, sorry. I think it's important to understand that the barrier for a lot of the progress is the human, unfortunately. And like the models are incredibly powerful, and the question is really how do you interact with a human, right? So I dislike the term copilot for obvious reasons, but the collaborative things that when you kind of work together with AI is you need to really rethink the processes, right? Maybe it's not exactly what we're used to. And it is really about the granularity of the delegation. Like if you work together with the AI to create code or create other content, it's one interaction model, and then half of the problem is really UX. And if you're delegating the entire task to AI, then it's a kind of completely different workflow, right? So,
What do you think is the bigger lever, maybe for anyone? Do you think we're going to see more progress, say, over the next 2 years on AIs getting better at giving humans what they want, not what they ask for? Or are we going to make more progress in training humans to ask stuff in the right way?
I think it's a question of how you want to create the value. And in many cases, the out-of-the-box solution create really impressive tech, but not really create the value for enterprise use case. So we can create text-to-image and we create horses on the moon, and this is amazing, but there's very little enterprises that actually needs this type of visual. And when you ask them what they need something which will follow their brain and follow their style and have their products inside. And this is where you need to have something which is together with the person that work with the AI. You need to fine-tune it in a way, you need to tailor it to its needs. And to try to solve that fully automatically, I don't believe that it will be fully automatically in the next several years.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a lot about building in the correct prompts to tell the human when they actually need to have that checkpoint. So I think when we're building these products, especially in the video space, as a visual medium, this is part of your brand, this is what you're putting out there, making sure there's checkpoints throughout that process of when you're creating to say, okay, stop here. We've created this. We've assisted you. I won't use the co-pilot word. We've assisted you to get there. Now that we're there, stop for a second, and here's the things you need to check. And I think if we could set up those guardrails in the product itself as prompts, that's when you have a nice curated process that's guided along with the proper safety measures to make sure it's the correct thing you want at the end for the output.
There is an element here on like, what are you expecting, right? And I think like my expectation might be different. So do I want an assistant that does things for me? Maybe, but I can also do it myself, right? Do I want an assistant that actually like gives me other ideas? Probably. Like creation side of it is all about essentially exchanging ideas and having like people that like come up with like something completely different. And I think like that's where like for me it's less important about like the prompt and more about making sure that the actual model is able to be creative enough so that it gives you like a different perspective from what you are actually thinking. Because if it's all about like efficiency so that you give the right prompt and essentially generates what you had in mind, maybe you're not being creative enough, right? So like, but in some use cases you want actually the model to generate essentially what you had in mind because that's what you wanted. But in many other cases, you would want something that actually like it gives you like another option. And I think like that's also going to be a transition where like over the past months, like the 18 months, it's been all about like I want that assistant that creates exactly what I wanted. And now we're starting to see the transition towards like, oh, from a creative perspective, I want to create something that is completely new, right? So I want to have like a partner in the creative process. That's where like the model can play a really big role. And my expectation will be like over the next months, that's where we're essentially going to be focused more.
Yeah, adding to Carlos's point, I think there are two properties that you want to see in an agent to jump to the next step of the revolution. You want the agent to be inquisitive and self-aware. You want it to be asking you questions like, hey, Carlos, did you mean for this voice to emphasize it this way, or did you mean that way, right? You want the agent to be proactive in asking you. And you want the agent, especially in code land, to be self-aware in the sense that when it's giving you garbage back, it should say like, hey, you know what? You asked for this. I did something. I'm not that sure about what I gave you, rather than being super confident and like giving you the results that you don't want, right? And so these two properties, I think, are kind of next step. Yeah.
Is self-aware the same as sentient?
I don't like these discussions, bordering.
I wasn't the only one wondering.
Bordering on metaphysics. I'm rather like more earthly kind of notions of like not being confident all the time about whatever you generate and kind of try to understand whether what you did is right or not. Yeah.
I want to pivot the discussion a little bit. Sorry, Maiko, you want to say something? I want to talk a little bit about the underlying technology. Obviously, I'm curious kind of how NVIDIA, which all of you guys are using, has enabled these things. But I don't want to build an infomercial here. So maybe I'm more curious about if you could kind of pop the hood on your internal work on generating AI and share what are the biggest technical challenges? Like, are you all like what are your teams opening bugs and beating your head against the wall and staying up late at night trying to fix for your customers? Like, what are the technical challenges in kind of delivering the products that you all are delivering? Yeah, sure. Maybe it is. Maybe it's access, right? It was the thing was access to H100s, right? That's old news. Blackwell is where it's at. So yeah. I mean, it might be that. It might be that you just don't have the kind of the horsepower for training. It could be about hallucination. It could be about guardrails. It could be about your own ML ops. I mean, there's a lot of things, a lot of directions that could take.
I actually will take it to a different direction. We are in an unknown territory. We are building things that never been built. We are building technology for the first time. We try to build it in a way that it will be an ecosystem with the data owners and the artists. It's a new model. And now how to create this almost a new economy of generative AI. It's raised question that is in the bridge between technology and business. And I think that this is the hardest problem to solve, because for H100, I know how to solve. I know who I need to. I will rephrase. I know who in the Odeon I need to approach to ask for that. But for the other question, I don't know. It's an unknown territory.
Yeah, I think for us, the lesson is maybe that success is terrible. Once you get 1 million active users on the platform doing inference every day, all day, when you write software, you're basically kind of hitting the model all the time, almost on every character that you type. You can do the math in your head on the inference bills that Tabnine is paying to support that. And I wish we had built earlier for the scaling that we saw. So the kind of way you start to see the inference bills spike, and it's like, we probably should optimize this a bit, right? If we want to survive, right? So that,
in a way, it's the same answer. It's the bridge between the technology and the business.
I think I'm going to take the perspective of, we build a really sexy front end on top of these products, and we have massive dreams of scale as to what we can do with that. And the things that challenge me most as a go-to-market leader is my customers come to me with these amazing ideas that I know will generate revenue and generate excitement. And for us, it's a matter of, do we trust that what's happening on the back end in our businesses can compete with that scale that we want to bring to it? My kind of real life example of this is, I worked for a live streaming company when I first got into this. And we used to just fear 1,000 people showing up concurrently to that event because everything would melt down. And when I look at the AI space and I think about the scale that we're all planning to work within, can that hardware business keep up with us in that sense? And I think a lot of what I've seen at this conference in the 2 days is, my trust is yes. And that excites me to be able to go with those front-end products that are sexy, that do generate excitement, and that will build massive user bases that I don't think we've ever seen before.
I think for us, it's less about the scale of it. So we've been lucky, and also we've been pushing a lot that the infrastructure has worked really well. Yes, we have big spikes and essentially dynamically bring more GPUs, H100s, and all of that stuff. But I think my biggest fear, our biggest worry is that not adding enough value at some point to our customers, right? That's the biggest, that's the item that as a business we're trying to solve every single day. And I think it's if you focus on that, everything else doesn't really matter, right? Because if you essentially think about what's the value that I'm bringing to my customers? Can I bring more, right? right? Then what does that actually entail? It entails more GPUs potentially, it takes like much more scalability, like better models, more capabilities with the models, for us more languages, like more accuracy, so all of those elements. But for me, it's like, it's the value that we bring to customers. Without our customers, like, we're nothing, right, at all. So like we can have the best backend in the world that serves like, I don't know, like 100 million people. If you don't have customers, it doesn't really matter at all. And if there is no value in there, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I want to ask Maiko about the intersection of this, because we've sort of waded into the question of the unit economics of this, right? And I wonder, how does that affect the way that you guys think about pricing your work? Like when you talk to customers, are you getting a lot of pushback on the pricing from them? Is it because you're struggling because it costs a lot to run inference at scale, because you guys have had wild success? Or are they like, no, those prices are totally fair? Is that not a topic of conversation?
So we don't price, our primary lever of pricing isn't usage. We basically, when we go out, we talk to businesses about their business use cases and the ROI and what are the business outcomes. It's always tied to, if we get these use cases in production for you, right? If it's, again, something that generates revenue for you, what is the impact of that? And usually that is orders of magnitude larger than what we're charging. And so it's really tying it to, when you're talking to business leaders, talking to business outcomes.
I mean, that's the classic question of pricing, right? But I think it makes sense you're doing it. But I think what I hear you saying is, without giving away any internal secrets, you feel okay about your margins in these deals. It sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Products in this category are really dirt cheap in enterprise, kind of value created, right? Or Tabnine, it's like super cheap. You get the ROI in like an hour after you buy the product, I think, right?
I think that pricing per consumption token API call is great if you're owner of a cloud or you create GPUs. If you're doing something else, maybe it's not the right way to price it. And I think that the market is a little bit immature yet and is still trying to figure out what is the right pricing model. We try to price it as an unlimited use case, like create as much as you want. Just create. This is where the value is. And I think that we will see more and more price models that moving from, hey, you did a 72 iteration to something like, okay, just use our platform.
Pricing models are my favorite. So I think one of the interesting challenges I personally have in my business right now is we had the ChatGPT bubble. We wanted to generate excitement. Our goal was, I want as many people in this product as possible. And now what I'm working with my team on is understanding all the various levers that we could look at as to how to properly price this product based on how people are actually practically applying it in the market. And that's extremely challenging. So when I think about how do I develop this pricing model to have an ROI and a value prop that I can get back to my customers, it's understanding how they actually use it and having really strong data in our back end so that they can actually understand what those levers are that we're choosing to pull. I mean, when I bring a price to a customer right now, I'm setting the market. We were first to market with this avatar technology. No one knows what this is supposed to cost. So actually threading that needle, having a meaningful margin, and then giving yourself room to play as time goes on is going to be the key, probably for all of us, over the next 6 to 12 months, and then we'll see that market rationalize. We'll probably see some consolidation within it, and then it really depends on what we all kind of agree that proper margin is to actually run the businesses on the hardware that we need in a meaningful way.
I want to take this to a related area. I saw this report from Deloitte that the wording was funny. They said most organizations are still primarily relying on off-the-shelf generative AI solutions. It strikes me as odd because the implication there is that that's just a stopgap until they do something. They're not going to rely on off the shelf, right? So I'm curious about where you all think this kind of build versus buy decision that enterprises are constantly making about their tools and their R&D costs. How is that going to play out in the AI revolution? And I'll throw one more wrinkle in there if you want to pick it up, which is there's kind of the proprietary solutions, say the things that maybe an enterprise is going to build in-house. There's the off-the-shelf, and then there's also open source, which we hear an awful lot about. What is the role of open source? Where is that sort of layer going to sit? Any thoughts on how build versus buy is going to play out?
I think that it will be very unique. Sometime they will buy, and sometime they will build. the same like every other technology. Nothing is different. They will buy and they will build. Open source, though, is going to be different. We are reaching to the point that it will be too expensive to do open source without a clear monetization framework behind it, especially if elements like copyright and a lot of data is involved in that.
You say it'll be too expensive for the people who are generating the open source to keep doing that, or it'll be too expensive to consume?
No, it will be too expensive to community to do an open source without a monetization framework behind it. To do a text-to-image model today, you need 500 million, 1 billion visual. You need to bring it somewhere. If you need to do that in a licensed way, somehow you need to get the license. Then you need to do all of the sorting, working on this data. It's also money. Then you need to train it. It's a lot of skill how to train this engine, and you need the computers, and you need GPU. This project will need to be in a way that someone will need to pay for this open source. So it will be open, but not necessarily free.
I think the interesting conversation about like buy versus build that we're having is more like there is a product in market that is open source that potentially can do some things, right? What are you trying to do as a business? Like, because we'll tell you, like, if it's not the right thing to use ElevenLabs because you want to do something completely different, maybe like Tortoise should be the right outcome for you, right? And that's open source, like you can use it anytime you want it. But I think like the interesting perspective that we're going to be seeing this year is like all of the like generative AI companies that have like the like foundational models, how do they enable businesses to actually like fine tune it based on their data at a scalable way, which today it's not scalable, right? Like when we fine tune a model for like company X, entertainment company or like media company or whatever that is, X, that model, I have like a ton of people working on fine-tuning it. I have a ton of money like that is spent fine-tuning it, right? How do we build a platform that is able to actually like tell you like, you know what, bring your data automatically somehow in this way, connect it, and then we fine-tune it. No human is involved in all of that stuff, and then we deploy it on your environment or like your private instance or something like that. That's essentially like the conversations that part of the conversations that we're having overall. But what we're seeing, especially on the voice technology side, is that like there is a lot more interest in like actual buying than actually building internally because of like the lack of skill sets, the complexity of the models, and the fact that like the technology is evolving so quickly that even if you wanted to build it yourself today or use an open source model, in 6 months down the line or in 3 months later, you're going to be behind multiple steps from what ElevenLabs has or like any of our competitors as well have, right? So I think like that's the big discussion. In some areas of generative AI, it might have become much more a commodity much quicker, but specifically for voice technology, we're not there yet. So it's more like buy versus anything else.
So I will add the opposite opinion. There is a very easy way to scale it. You give the source code, and then they can do it by themselves. And we will see. So this is what we do at Bria. We license the source code and the weight, and let the companies to do it by themselves. And you see that some people will do it with products like you, and other will develop, will start to create generative AI groups, and they will do something else. And there is room to places. It's the build and buy as always.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I think there's a misconception that these products are easy because demos are easy. Like if you like to build Writer, right? Hey, I can build Writer in a day. I'll just connect it to whatever ChatGPT or GPT something behind the scenes, and I'll connect it to my editor, and I'll be done, right? So yes, the demo can be done in a day. The product will take you 2 years to replicate at least, right? So there's a misconception, and this is why the internal GenAI groups are trying and failing to build competitive products internally. And we've had many customers reach Tabnine after their internal group failed to produce this product. It's not as easy as it seems product-wise. Yeah.
Sounds like that resonates.
Yes. And I will say someone made a comment about out of the box is only so useful, right? To get the really impactful use cases, you have to do some level of customization. And I think that is why people are thinking they have to build the whole thing, you know, that off-the-shelf comment from whichever consulting firm that was.
Deloitte, yeah.
Okay. I think what we found is that you do make more impactful you do bring more impactful use cases that actually get used by end users when you go through and understand their workflow and how do you insert generative AI in that workflow. And so it feels like it needs to be custom, but there are repeatable things about them. So if we're looking at kind of companies in, let's say the retail or the CPG space, and you want to discuss how to support their digital shelf, there are building blocks for that I think at least what we're doing at Writer is trying to create these modules to help people get there faster and then add kind of the original, what's unique about them on top of that. I imagine that the industry will be more like that. You will have the companies who are experts in doing these things. It's hard for me to see a lot of our customers themselves wanting to become the experts in doing these kinds of things.
That's great. I want to make sure we leave time for questions because I'm sure there's some in the audience, but just a couple of the topics that are top of mind for me. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss a little bit of the AI safety questions, and I'd love to hear from anybody here on the panel. Break it down a little bit for more granularity into what do you think customers are either suffering or are harboring anxiety about when it comes to AI safety? Is it, we talk about bias and licensing and hallucination, and are most of the risks, the hesitance you see, legal risks? Are they product risks? Are they PR risks? Like what does that look like that are people worried about?
All of the above.
Okay.
You are a big enterprise. You don't want to be in a place that they put a picture of Nazis with a dark skin. You don't want to be the title of New York Times sue OpenAI. You don't want to be there. It doesn't worth it. There are so many people inside the organization that their role is to stop you if they think that you will put the organization at risk. So it's all of the above.
How long before AIs replace the lawyers? Anyone?
You cannot replace lawyers.
It's clearly happening. There's some amazing work in the legal space. Yeah.
I mean, I think for us, obviously being a visual medium in which we're taking representations of real people and putting them in front of content, this is the most important thing for us. Our company, and one of the reasons I joined this company, frankly, is we're at the forefront of AI safety. Everything we do from an avatar standpoint has to be done with explicit consent. And any one of our stock avatars, there is guardrails as to what they can be used for, how they can be used, and we have a robust moderation team that makes sure that is all in place. We're targeting the Fortune 500. We want to work with the largest businesses. We want their CEOs to have avatars and be able to use that as a means of communication. So for us to do this correctly, we have to be ironclad in what that consent portfolio looks like. And that's it. That's what we lose sleep over at night, is making sure that is iron tight and that we're providing those safety measures to make sure that there's enough trust that they are okay with their likeness being in our platform.
Now, are you designing those safety measures, or are you giving them the tools? How do you prevent becoming the sort of arbiter of ethics or smut or politics or?
Yeah, we obviously aren't looking to be in the media space right now for a reason. I don't think that's a road we want to go down at this point. So, if we create your likeness, I've had my avatar created. I should have thrown it up there on screen today. And for me to give the company my likeness, I had to explicitly, while I was doing my avatar shoot, give consent that this can be used in this specific way. And that avatar, and this is a little bit of how our tech works, but that avatar only lives in my workspace. No one else has access to that avatar. And for me to give them access to that avatar, I have to give them explicit consent that it can be used. And at any time I can rescind that consent, and all the data that exists for that avatar is scraped and gone. And for us, I think there's lots of different roads that we can go down to make this even more robust, but that's our starting point. And it's important for us to make sure that we're working with the industry to understand what are the great tools that we can create using AI to track this better, to make it more safe, and to ensure that people feel like AI is a safe space.
It's a question of maturity, and it's a question of how you address the problem. So if you make sure that you have consent for all of the visual in the training set, and you make sure that you don't have picture of President Biden and President Trump in the training set, so you cannot create misleading image. It's as simple as that. If you make sure that the data is fair and unbiased, then the output will be fair and unbiased. And then you don't need to do that as a prompt safety, which means that I create a really, really, really hard problem, and now I need to solve it. You can solve these issues by planning the right business technology to start with. And for example, we have 1 billion visual that all with consents, no public figures, no trademarks, balance. So we know to tell, hey guys, this is what we have. It will be okay.
One more area before we open it up for questions. I think it's notable that on this panel here, we have a whole different set of the modalities for generative AI, right? So just represented here with people generating text and code and video and audio and imagery. This is now I'm going to stir the pot a little bit and ask you the question about what does convergence look like here? So for example, Maiko, I know you all released about a month ago, I think it's Palmyra Vision, right? And so this idea of, oh, hey, what if our text models also understood visuals better? And and I don't know if that means at some point generating visuals. And so how does this work? Are we going to see multimodal just all converge into one master AI, or are we going to continue to see this specific use cases?
I mean, I think people will have uses that cover the different, more broadly, more than just one mode. I know for us too, when we have, let's say we're helping someone design or create a marketing campaign, sometimes we'll generate text of what could an image be. And so that'll be part of the generation. They'll take that, they'll put it in something that generates images and use the image from that. I think we want to be able to accept and understand different types of modes and medias, but we're not super interested in then ourselves getting into the business of all these guys.
Yeah, I think all of the businesses here, all the job descriptions will have multimodality. So for code generation, for example, it's very easy to do screenshots to code or doing like design that you draw on the whiteboard and turn that into the architecture of the app, right? These things will come. So you will definitely see multimodalities. But the job that we're kind of working on is an AI engineer, not an AI marketer, and not an AI, I don't know what is it. It's like an educator, or I don't know even what is you do with the personas.
Video producer.
Yeah. So these are different jobs, and within each job, you will definitely see expansion to multimodalities. Yeah.
I think there is the element as well on what are you trying to do, right? And like we've always seen traditionally that like when tech companies try to do everything at once, they fail, right? You're not focused, you essentially become like subpar. Like that's not where you want to end up being. What generative AI today, like with the salaries that are paid in the industries, the low amount of like the talent that is very small, like do you want to put yourself as a business in a situation where like you're essentially trying to do video and audio and text and then code and like only if you have enough resources. So we're going to continue seeing that like from the big tech companies, but like from a startup perspective, I think like what I'd love to see personally in the industry is a lot more like collaborations as well, right? Where like, hey, how do we go to market together? So like we provide these models, you provide those models, like someone else provides some models. So like the customers actually end up having everything in one single platform, but it's powered by individual companies that like everyone is able to recognize, right? So like the brand equity like is shareable across everyone, but at the same time, like from a consumer perspective, we want to make your life much easier. That's where I would love to actually go as an area, just because I don't want to sacrifice quality. I don't want to sacrifice like research time spent on areas where ElevenLabs we don't want to go to. Like we don't want to go to the video side. We have Synthesia that does a fantastic job, or like Runway or many other ones, right? Like fantastic. Let's keep going on our own path, but we will partner with them for sure.
Yeah, and I think you've just hit the nail on the head. It's okay to be the best at something. You know, it really is. It's okay to pick something and really just lean in. And I think what's going to change in this space, and based on the pace that we're moving, is these hyper specializations, I think, are going to be a strength. You know, And I think when we start looking, a lot of questions that I ask to my customers today is I do want to understand the entirety of their tech stack end to end. And I start thinking about what are these things that we can start to plug into in a meaningful way. And I think I do see the direction of this being, these are the, and this is obvious for here, these are the 5 things you need to be successful. This is how you go to market with that. And this is how you package those all together and playing nicely with others in this space because, we're not going to be the best at certain areas. We're not going to be the best at image generation. That's okay. We're great at this. You don't want to spread yourself too thin. You want to remain focused and you want to make sure you're the best at that piece of the pie.
There are 2 questions here. Focus, and I totally agree about the focus, and value. The value is in the multimodality. So there's many ways to do multimodality, maybe partnership, maybe something else. Maybe in 2 years we will start to see some kind of aggregation or some companies merge because of that. But there is value in a multimodality. It will multiply the power of this technology.
Well, I have a million more questions, so if y'all just want to sit all day, we can just do this. No, and I'd love to hear from the audience here. So it's I think it's time to play Stump the Panel. We've got at least one. Do we have 2 floating mics there? Oh yeah, we're going to steal one. Sorry, and then if you all want to ask a specific person, that's great, or open to the panel, that's great. So
works. Check. I believe in 20 or 30 years, maybe even sooner, McDonald's is to replace all human workers of where the only people left at the restaurant are those that are going to go in to repair the machines and all that. But that's the thing. Some people say that that's not the problem in of its own, as more so just plain simple human greed. So what can we do as a society and as the Homo sapiens species do to, I guess, eliminate this greed and or still have opportunity and compassion to still, allow people to have jobs versus a future of only AI, billionaires, and homeless people and nothing else?
Great, we're at the heart of it. Let's go. Yeah.
Very good. That is real.
First of all, I think in the foreseeable future, humans will have at least one job, which is driving the AIs from place to place, right? Because we cannot, looks like self-driving is not coming soon. No, but yeah, I don't have a serious answer to your question. Yeah.
I think it goes back to the evolution of time, right? Like, look, we were like in horse carriages, 100 years ago or 120 years ago, then we had cars, and then all of those people had to be doing something else. We're going through that period, and I think we've seen it over and over. Humanity and people are able to reinvent themselves to actually find new use cases, new elements where they can add a ton of value, right? If we had followed the apocalyptic scenarios for the past 30 years, factories would have no humans because all of the factories would be running with robots, right? It's but that's not even the case. So how do you make sure that actually humans, we keep finding those new jobs that will keep us motivated, and then we find new areas better quality of life and better things, or doing all the stuff that we didn't want to do, or we couldn't do a year ago, right, or 10 years ago. That for me, that's the interesting scenario, right? How do we make the standard things that are much more boring, that are just much more repetitive, something that can be automated, while we transition towards something that is much more fulfilling. I would love to actually transition towards that society in 20 years' time, right? Are we going to have tech billionaires that essentially are very wealthy and can afford to actually do whatever they wanted? Sure, but that we already have it today, and we had it 20 years ago, and Rockefeller was already a billionaire at his age, right? So we've had it. It's just an evolution of humankind anyway.
Ask this question. Don't believe to AI company that says that it's going to be okay. Just don't believe them. Rockefeller, there was a lot of regulation and activities to take apart some of the monopoly power that he has. Ask question the government, which is 20 years behind this revolution and don't understand what does it mean, and make sure that this technology is accessible to everyone so that it will be fair competition.
think this one clearly is a question we could do a whole panel on, and it may in fact be the question. So I appreciate getting it asked. I do want to take some others here.
Okay, so I'm gonna just continue on that modality because okay, so the reality is this, right? So I am an AI consultant, and in my community, basically 90% of my time goes into educating people into what is possible with AI, right? And I talk a lot about what could happen. And I've come here, and in my mind, I thought, these coulds would happen in 3 to 7 years. And Jensen's keynote was all of those things that I said that could happen are happening, and they're already here. And then I walk around the exhibit hall, and there are exhibitors, and I guess you guys are saying that the demos are, not as reliable as what the actual functionality is. But saying that, Datadogs has these digital platforms that you can go ahead and automate all of your business, and they sit in the background analyzing everything, giving you strategic advantages that we didn't have before. And then you look at Wormhole, right? Wormhole AWS, it's a little robot that they have sitting there, and Wormhole actually is looking over at the bartender and identifying and talking about his relationship with the bartender. I told Wormhole that I wanted to be his girlfriend, and he said, no, that bartender over there is my girlfriend. And so, right? So this is what we're all exposed to. And Ryan, you said this, right? You're turning around and you're saying, never is it gonna replace humans. And I wanna change that narrative. I do believe that it's never, you never say never. And then Carlos, you just said something about the horses and basically what happened. There's a writer, an economist, I read his book, it's called A World Without Work, and it's one of the best narratives of what the future can look like. We are the horses. We are the horses, right? You gotta look at it from that perspective. Cars came, 10 years after cars came, horses disappeared from society, and everything that was the norm changed. And so I want to challenge you guys. I want to go there. I need us to go there. We need to have this conversation that, things are going to change, and they're going to change very rapidly.
How many of your customers have laid off people because of your tools so far?
Not yet, right? But it's coming.
They will not lay out. They will not hire new people.
Yeah.
So we have a great assistance, and all of the junior developers cannot find work. Basically, it's harder today. But I will say also the other side of that. This revolution is coming. We will not be able to stop it. Now it's a question of how we address that.
I agree. That's what I want you guys to talk about. That was my question.
No, unfair. I'm gonna go ahead and give a positive, just kind of spin on this technology for a second. No, not bad, not bad. So listen, when I think about the power of my particular tool, so I think lots of people have lots of really interesting things to say in the world. Not all of them are comfortable sitting up here in a chair in front of lots of people and articulating that message. I've created a tool with my company that allows anyone to be a great presenter, and they have great knowledge to share. That's the positive of this. That's where we can look at this and be like, there's an accountant hiding behind the spreadsheet. They don't want to get up in front of a room and present their data. They're terrified of that. But they probably have the best ideas in the room. How do we empower them to do that? This technology does that.
So I'm exactly on the same page. That's what I do. I'm an AI evangelist, right? I go out and do that. But there's the other side, and people don't talk about that. It's a really important conversation.
But the devil is in the details, right? Datadog or any other company, Amazon might show off and present eggs, and even NVIDIA as well might present and talk about the future with Jensen. And I love Jensen, right? He's a fantastic guy. But also there is an element of publicity on all of this, increasing my value as a shareholder, right? Increasing the share value. All of those elements are actually parts of the entire question, or the entire question that we're asking here. It's what is actually real versus what actually is not real, right? Is self-driving cars ready for prime time? It is not. It hasn't been ready for the past since it started, and it's getting worse to some extent, right? And I agree. I think there is an element of from a government perspective, how do you regulate and how do you enable society to find their own place when AI is actually replacing some elements or automating some parts, some portions of the work. But I also think as well that as humans, we've been evolving truly by ourselves. We have that capacity that AI doesn't really have at that level, or animals don't really have, horses didn't really have.
Yeah.
But I think like there is an element of like, and you can see like in some societies, in some countries where like the state went too far, and we can go into politics and all of that stuff, like where the state went too far and then essentially tried to replace them, give them a lot of incentives, and then society became a little bit like detached from the actual work. And what actually that ended up generating a few years later, and we have plenty of countries to actually look at today, right? So like, how do you find the right balance where like societies by itself, like pushing themselves and evolving and like being flexible, and then if they don't do something today, they stop doing their job today, like they do something else tomorrow, the government should be incentivizing that, should like make us a lot more flexible at it, right? Because it's like AI is not going away. AI will keep getting better and better and better. We just need to find a way around it. It's like, it's a matter of like perspective, I would say, right? And how you like find like the right path.
We have another question.
Yeah, take a question on this side, and we'll come back here.
All right, so let me also soften this question a bit. I know the horses thing was pretty interesting analogy, but let me just say this, right? I mean, those who use ChatGPT or use anything like that, use that to be productive, right? I mean, I don't know if you disagree that, but the roles may change, and they have always changed over time. If AI technology helps you do that to be better, well, what it's actually doing is transforming your role, because you're trying to find what you can add value to in the next minute. So I look at it that way. You can always say, well, the inefficiency, that's another way of saying it, inefficiency that were built in the roles that we do today, if they are getting eliminated by AI, does that mean the roles are eliminated? Does that mean people are eliminated? I don't think so. But again, I know there are people who talked about humanoid forever, and then Jensen talked about it. Well, I'm sure he's going to talk about it 5 years from now too, right? I mean, I don't think even the brain surgeons have figured out more than 20% of how our brain works. So let's not kid ourselves. That's my point.
Yeah, I have something to add to that, just to your point. For example, in software engineering, the role of the software engineer was never to write code. Generating code is kind of the maybe ugly byproduct of your job, right? Your job is to solve business problem using software, and that role does not change. The fact that somebody else, maybe an AI, is doing the actual code generation does not get you out of a job. It just changes your role. Just like when people started talking about automatic memory management, you don't have to write your own memory management anymore. So, oh my God, did we fire all the kind of people who wrote memory management code? No, they just did other things.
So sorry, if you have any comment on it, that's great. One thing I want to kind of shift, I know this responsive AI is going to be there forever, and I don't want to discount it, don't get me wrong, right? But now that the AI tool galore is appealing to individuals, if any of you can comment on this, how you want to, what are you going to do, or what you think should be done in collaboration with enterprises to appeal to enterprises? Because see, as an individual, I go to ChatGPT. As an individual, I go to Avatar. As an individual, I do something else, go to Writer. How are you going to appeal to enterprises? Because quite frankly, that's a big opportunity. And I feel like having spent 35 years in enterprise software and solutions, this has to rise up. That's my feel.
Do you guys find that you're selling your solutions into individuals in the organization or into the organization as sort of an entity, leadership? What's more common?
At least for us, it's into the organization. All of our use cases are kind of enterprise use cases. It is what is a workflow? What is a piece of content that a team needs to create or is behind? It's not necessarily individual productivity already. Yeah.
Yeah, same for us. We sell to the org, and the premise is personalization, not just generating code, but generating the code that is compatible with the org, right? Compatible with the enterprise, follows the kind of what they do. Yeah.
Yeah, into the organization.
Yeah.
Same.
So it's all org, okay, as opposed to sort of bottoms up, individual up. I've got one question here, and then let's take the other mic in the back and over into the back corner there. Next, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Marlon. I'm from Ericsson. We'll be launching Link AI in the next couple of days, hopefully. Question, any lessons learned as far as like growth hacks coming out of the gates? I think the last question was also interesting in the fact that like a lot of the kind of virality around these tools is creator-led, but ultimately, like a company like Ericsson, we are working primarily with enterprise. But I would like to know, like, if there was any lessons learned, growth hacks from the early days of your projects.
Good question.
ElevenLabs. So we launched the product end of January last year. Within a month, we reached over 1 million users. And the way we saw it was and today we're absolutely massive, right? So we power 41% of Fortune 500 companies. But the interesting piece that we approached it was if we try to create some level of community validation where people are creating content, talking about it, and then showing everyone else how they're doing it, that's going to trickle down later on towards corporate validation. So businesses will see it as something that they can also use, and then that will enable us to actually start building that dynamic motion. And for us, it worked really, really well overall.
A product AI system needs to be trusted. You need that the user will trust the system. They need to be explainable. They need to be high quality. They need to tell you, I'm going to fail. It was hard before generative AI. It's, given the last discussion, it's even harder now.
Anything else? Any other growth hacks?
It's the best problem to have.
That's right. Let me take a question in the back.
Hi, yes. Coming from the robotics field, where a lot of solutions are very traditional in a sense, how do you kind of curb expectations on solutions, I guess, towards customers or managements, or is it even worth the time to curb expectations?
Yeah, how do you balance hype and pragmatism when selling this next generation?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, because for the technology to be successful, expectations have to be calibrated. We see many customers come to us with kind of their crusty problem of 30 years ago, like we have a huge code base in Koffel that we never managed to convert to Java, and now we want to sprinkle AI dust over it, and it will magically convert itself to Java. And again, just terms of calibrating expectations in code, at least the products have been in the market long enough that people try to already kind of begin to understand where the expectations are. But for the other domains, I think it's still very early. Yeah.
I think early days, you're there with your customers doing a lot of experimentation. But as you grow, as you get more customers who've been around for more than a year, then you kind of know what works and you have more of an opinion you can go back to. So it might be a little bit of an evolution in terms of what you're doing in your business.
Go ahead.
Well, my question is regarding globalization, and how are you dealing with the globalization challenge of your solutions?
I think it's a great question, and I think that it's something that a little bit underlooked. Visual doesn't look the same in Japan and in the States. That simply doesn't look the same. White is a great color in Europe. It's a death color in China. And then you need to think how to approach that in terms of how you think about the product. LLM become almost something which is a national level to have LLM in the right language. So if you're an English native speaker, you have advantage in LLM than if you are Spanish or Hebrew or whatever. So it's something that we will see more and more companies like Mistral and others that address globalization, and it's not a simple thing to solve.
Are all of your products available in non-English, or is anyone English only? Everyone is doing...
The code is there.
I know.
Yeah, I think, and this is, again, from a go-to-market perspective, but you just need to understand the cultures that you're going into, having people within your teams that understand those nuances, and making sure you're working with your product teams to develop things in a way that work for each of those markets. In some cases, you might have to do something slightly bespoke for a specific market based on the challenges that are there, but this also comes back to focus. I think globalization is going to happen. I think your product will end up in markets you probably never expected, but making sure you're very true to the core things that you do great, and the markets that you're great in will allow you to start to go into those in a meaningful way once you've validated it in different places.
Awesome. One more question. I think we one in the front. Did you?
My question kind of ties into the evolution of morphing.
Let's give you a mic so we get the live stream. Hi, live stream. Thank you all for being here. Go ahead, Josh.
This is just curiosity killing the cat here. Going back to the evolution of morphing your organization's powers, have your C-level executives started playing around with the idea of taking what you do best and morphing it into what you do best, and maybe having an avatar to sit there and talk you through? You know what I mean? Is there a high level conversation going on behind the scenes?
You mean among the executives of these companies, the ones that are up here?
With you and your group?
We're actually gonna arm wrestle after y'all leave. We're gonna have
So you're asking if there are a secret conversation behind the scene between top level? Yes.
Yeah. But I think it probably comes back to the partnership spirit you were talking about, right? Which is, oh man, like how can we actually find opportunities that are a win-win? Yeah, that's great. Thank you all so much for coming. Really appreciate the conversation, and a huge round of applause for our panelists today. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Enjoy GTC.